Okay, so organic farming has been around for approximately 20 years and it continues to blossom in the United States along with many other countries. The term organic is defined by the USDA as food produced by farmers who emphasize the use of renewable resources and the conservation of soil and water to enhance environmental quality for future generations. Organic farming eliminates the use of GMOs, which are genetically modified organisms, chemical and synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, while still producing high yields and having numerous environmental benefits. So a major claim is that organic farming is a substantial benefit to the agricultural community. Next, organically grown food is safe to eat. Conventional farming methods use chemicals and synthetic fertilizers and pesticides to keep bugs, weeds, and pests at bay. In an article by the Harvard School of Public Health, it stated that organic farming eradicates the use of any chemicals, fertilizers, and pesticides. When pesticides aren't used on the crops, the plants develop a natural defense mechanism called phenols, and phenols are antioxidants in our bodies that allow our bodies to fight against cancers and heart disease when they're ingested. So not using chemicals and synthetic fertilizers and pesticides significantly reduce the risk for contracting like a type of food poisoning. So organic farmers do not use the genetically modified organisms, or better known as GMOs. A GMO, defined by the USDA, is a living organism that has been inserted with a gene from an unrelated species. So for example, it could be like corn, and then they take genes from a scorpion and then they inject it into the corn breed, so then it's resistant to like drought, weeds, bugs, you name it. Like it's not even really corn anymore. So although GMOs are a controversial topic all on their own, organic farming can thrive without them. Organic farming produces high yields, and in a study done by numerous agricultural researchers for bioscience, organically farmed crops typically showed low yields at first glance. However, over time, organic farming produces 1.3 times greater yields than conventional farming methods. And organic crops even produce high yields in drought years, according to bioscience. So organic farming has an array of environmental benefits as well. Organic farming practices are sustainable in the long term for various reasons. And a former agriculture extension agent in Washington, D.C. by the name of Don states that conventional farming practices promote soil erosion and deterioration of the soil's nutrients. The chemicals that people use, like farmers use in their fertilizers and pesticides and everything like that, it strips away all the natural nutrients that are in the soil that, you know, make your fruit and your veggies taste really good. And when they use all those chemicals, it makes the soil less fertile. And then that makes it harder for future years for you to plant even more and then have it taste the same and taste good too. So organic farming practices help ensure that non-synthetic products used on crops will help replenish the nutrients the soil lost during crop production. So when conventional farming practices are used, there's also agricultural runoff, which is a mix of water, chemicals, pesticides, synthetic fertilizers, and the runoff can end up in rivers, streams, lakes, and even oceans. And the runoff contaminates water sources, which obviously isn't good because it can make you sick. In organic farming practices, the agriculture runoff is water and dirt. Like a little dirt never hurt anyone. Also, the Organic Research Center states that there's been a 12% increase in biodiversity with the use of organic farming. The world lost 3/4 of its biodiversity when industrialized farming started because most farmers were only focused on growing one crop instead of a variety of crops. So in conclusion, organic farming is substantially beneficial to the agricultural community because it is safe to eat, produces high yields over time, and benefits the environment in multiple ways, like increased biodiversity, soil fertility, and no water contamination from agricultural runoff.
Thank you.
Then I'll bring the rough one with me
Yeah, okay.
next time.
No worries. Cydney, the topic is clear, the proposition is clearly stated, there's no preview of what the supporting structure is going to be, so I'm not exactly sure how it's going to be organized. When you get into the body of the speech, you do signpost the first supporting point, and that was the last signpost I heard in the speech until the summary of the argument. I think it gets to be a little bit messy and information sort of runs together in the argument, and it needs to be more distinct. Now, you do help yourself a little bit at the end of the speech because in the summary, you do kind of remind us, here are the points that I was trying to make, but I'm not sure why you weren't doing that in the body of the speech or why you didn't create a preview that makes it easier for people to listen to and make sense of those arguments from the beginning. You're a little dependent on hypotheticals in a couple of spots. The GMO information is mostly asserted. I didn't hear any data on that. You did have a nice statistic on the yields. I thought that was impressive, but there was no source on that one. On the other hand, you did have a source for the growth rates in drought conditions, and I thought that worked pretty well. The notion that the soil loses fertility is all asserted, and that it doesn't do that with the organic material. I think you need to have, I'm sure that you did research on this, but it's not being integrated into the speech, and the source citations are missing there. Let's see. There was a statistic on biodiversity, but it did sound to me like it's historical in context as opposed to contemporary, because you make a reference to when the farms first started and that they really emphasized a particular crop. The lack of biodiversity today is not really documented in any way, and why that's a problem, I'm not quite sure. All the stuff on soil erosion, on the dangers of runoff is mostly asserted, and I know that there's evidence on those things, so I'm not sure why you're not citing that evidence in the argument. Like I said, a little bit of structure, the citation of the sources would be a lot more convincing on the points that you're making. I think you do a nice job presenting it for the most part, and like I said at the end, I think you rescue your argument a little bit with the summary, give it, at least it's a clearer point that you're trying to make at the end and how all that information fits together. All right, thank you.